The Grand Galactic Council chamber resembled nothing so much as a circus crossed with a corporate boardroom, which was fitting given the absolute clown show about to unfold. The chamber's soaring crystalline walls housed thousands of species representatives, all perched, floating or sprawled in their environmentally controlled pods according to their particular biological needs. High Councillor Zixatal of the Meridian Concordat adjusted his atmospheric processor with what passed for a sneer among his kind, a slight ripple of his iridescent membranes. And now we come to the matter of the humans. He managed to make the word sound like something found growing under a rock. A chorus of derisive clicks, whistles, and electromagnetic pulses filled the chamber. The gathered representatives of the galaxy's civilized species had opinions about humans. Oh, yes, they did. Primitives, burbled Ambassador Cleaforth of the Hydrosian Collective, their fluid-filled environment pod, bubbling with disdain. Did you know they still use chemical propulsion for some of their spacecraft? Chemical, like savages playing with fire. They wage war amongst themselves over imaginary lines on their planet's surface, added Representative NX 227, their crystalline form refracting light in patterns of disapproval. Hardly the behavior of a species ready for galactic society. Zixatal raised several appendages for silence. Indeed, which brings us to today's proposal. The humans have been contained on their death world for nearly a standard cycle. Our policy of limiting their access to advanced technology while studying their development has yielded concerning results. Holographic displays materialized throughout the chamber, showing various scenes from Earth. Humans building ever larger spacecraft, expanding their military capabilities, making technological leaps that were uncomfortable. They're adapting our salvage technology far too quickly, noted General Vrax of the Hegemony Military Council, their scaled hide flushing dark purple with concern. The containment vessels we strategically lost near their space should have taken them decades to reverse engineer. They did it in months. And their population continues to grow, added another voice from the assembled masses. Despite the environmental pressures we've introduced through our climate modification programs. Zixatal's membranes pulsed with satisfaction as the council's mood shifted from mockery to concern. Precisely, which is why the military council has proposed a more permanent solution to the human question. The chamber grew quiet, well, as quiet as it could get, with thousands of different species' life support systems humming away. The holographic displays shifted to show military strategic projections, fleet movements, and weapon yields. "Surely you're not suggesting," began Ambassador Cleaforth, their fluid environment rippling with shock. "Preemptive pacification," Zixatal confirmed. "The humans are too unpredictable, too aggressive, too adaptable. Better to handle them now while we still maintain technological superiority than wait until they become a genuine threat." General Vrax's scales rippled with anticipation. "We've already positioned fleet elements in nearby systems. The humans' primitive sensors haven't detected a thing. One swift strike, and we eliminate a future problem. Have we considered diplomatic options?" A quiet voice came from one of the smaller pods near the chamber's floor. The occupant was barely visible. Some sort of gas-based intelligence from the outer rings. Zixatal's membranes flashed with what might have been embarrassment. "The human ambassador is, technically, entitled to address the council before any action is taken. A formality, nothing more. They'll no doubt bluster and threaten, as is their species' way." "Then let's get it over with," General Vrax rumbled. "Bring in the human, let them make their futile protests, and then we can proceed with the pacification." The assembled council members settled in for what they assumed would be entertaining theatre, the primitive human attempting to play at galactic politics. None of them noticed the small device the human ambassador had left behind during their last visit, quietly recording everything that had been said. None of them had any idea just how badly they'd miscalculated, and none of them would survive long enough to fully appreciate the magnitude of their mistake. The human ambassador strode into the council chamber looking absolutely and completely unremarkable, which should have been their first warning sign. No powered armor, no weapons, not even a protective suit. Just a plain black business suit and an expression of mild amusement. "Honourable Council members," the ambassador began, voice carrying a warmth that didn't quite reach their eyes. "I understand you've been discussing Earth's future. Allow me to contribute some historical context to your deliberations." Zixatal's membranes flickered with poorly concealed impatience. "The Council has already—" "In Earth's history," the ambassador continued as if Zixatal hadn't spoken, "we have a concept called poking the bear. It refers to the unwise practice of antagonizing something dangerous while assuming it's too stupid or docile to respond effectively." General Vrax's scales flushed with anger at the interruption. The ambassador smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "The fascinating thing about humans is that we're quite willing to play nice, to cooperate, to overlook slights and schemes and sabotage. Yes, we know about the climate modifications, because we generally prefer peace to war." The ambassador's voice hardened. "But when pushed too far, we stop playing nice." "Are you threatening the Council?" Cleforth burbled incredulously. "Oh, no. Just providing context. You see, you've all assumed our primitive technology means we're weak, that our internal conflicts mean we're disorganized, that our adaptability means we're unpredictable." The ambassador chuckled. "You never considered that we might be all of those things and still be far more dangerous than you can imagine." The ambassador pulled out a small device, the twin of the one that had been recording the Council's earlier discussion. "This is your only warning. Reconsider your plans for Earth, because if you don't, I promise you this, you will learn exactly why humans are called Deathworlders, and none of you will enjoy the lesson." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Zixatal's membranes pulsed with dismissive amusement. "Your primitive species cannot hope to stand against the combined might of the Galactic Council. This display of bravado changes nothing." "Then we have nothing more to discuss." The ambassador turned to leave, then paused. "One last thing. You might want to check on your fleet. The one you think we haven't detected. It would be a shame if something had happened to it while you were all in here plotting genocide." The chamber erupted in dismissive chatter as the ambassador departed. None of them believed the implied threat. None of them bothered to check their fleet's status immediately. That, too, would prove to be a mistake. The Galactic Council's fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, a testament to their supposed technological superiority. 5,000 ships, from nimble destroyers to massive dreadnoughts, their hulls gleaming with exotic alloys that humans couldn't possibly comprehend or counter. General Vrax stood on the bridge of the flagship, scales glittering with anticipation. "Begin the attack! Show these primitives the price of defiance!" The first wave targeted Earth's orbital installations, communications satellites, primitive space stations, and the handful of pitiful defensive platforms humans had managed to construct. Plasma lances and quantum disruptors lit up the night side of Earth like artificial auroras. "Sir," one of Vrax's bridge officers reported, "the humans appear to be broadcasting entertainment signals." "What?" Sure enough, across every frequency, the humans were transmitting what appeared to be something called cat videos and something else labelled epic fail compilations. "They're not even trying to coordinate a defence," Ambassador Cleforth observed from their command bubble. "Perhaps they've accepted their fate." The first wave of attacks struck home. Satellites exploded, space stations crumbled. The humans' orbital infrastructure began to fall apart exactly as predicted by the Council's military simulations. "Except, General," another officer called out, "I'm detecting anomalous readings from the debris fields." "Irrelevant," Vrax dismissed. "Launch the second wave. Target their primitive ground-based defensive installations." The fleet's second wave descended into low orbit, weapons charging. Tactical displays showed thousands of targeting solutions, each aimed at what the Council's intelligence suggested were Earth's military bases and weapons facilities. "Sir, the debris, it's moving against solar wind patterns." "Weather satellites," someone suggested. They're death throes. The fleet's weapons opened fire. Beams of concentrated energy and exotic particles rained down toward Earth's surface. The humans' response was pathetically minimal. A few hundred missiles launched from silos, easily intercepted by point defense systems. "This is almost disappointing," Vrax rumbled. "I expected at least some challenge from the Deathworlders." That's when the debris started fighting back. What they'd thought were fragments of destroyed satellites suddenly revealed themselves as swarms of microsatellites. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands. Each no bigger than a human hand, but moving with impossible precision. "Interesting design choice," the human's global broadcast suddenly cut in, replacing the cat videos. "Making your ship's shields unidirectional, very energy efficient, very predictable." The microsatellites swarmed like angry insects, each one carrying a payload that was decidedly not primitive. They slipped through the gaps in the Council ship's forward-facing shields, attacking from behind and below and above all at once. "Sir, we're losing contact with the outer fleet elements," someone reported, their voice rising in panic. 30% of our ships are... they're just gone." Vrax's scales flushed dark with rage. "Impossible! Their technology is centuries behind ours. They use chemical propulsion. They fight over territorial boundaries." "About that," the human broadcast continued, sounding almost bored, "did it ever occur to you that maybe we kept using primitive technology because it amused us to watch you underestimate us? That maybe our internal conflicts were just practice?" The flagship's tactical display was a chaos of disappearing friendly signals and multiplying hostile ones. The debris field wasn't just fighting back. It was growing. Each destroyed Council ship seemed to spawn hundreds more microsatellites, like some kind of technological hydra. "Pull back," Vrax ordered. "Regroup at the rally point." "Oh, you can try," the human voice commented. "But I should mention, those weren't just weather satellites you destroyed in the first wave. Some of them were hyperspace inhibitors, very crude ones by your standards. Probably won't work at all." The fleet's hyperspace drives powered up. Nothing happened. "Well," the human broadcast concluded, "would you look at that? They worked after all. Isn't science fascinating?" The thing about humans that the Galactic Council had never quite grasped was that they were, at their core, giant nerds with a flair for the dramatic. Which explained why, just as the alien fleet realized they were trapped in Earth's orbit, every screen on every Council ship suddenly started playing what appeared to be a countdown. "What is this?" Vrax demanded, scales now a sickly shade of grey. "Some kind of primitive psychological warfare?" "Actually," came the familiar voice of the human ambassador, "we just really like countdown sequences. Builds anticipation, you know." As the countdown hit 0, the moon flickered. Not the subtle kind of flicker, like a faulty light bulb. No, Earth's entire moon seemed to ripple like a pond disturbed by a stone, and then disappeared. In its place stood the largest space station any Council member had ever seen, its surface bristling with weapon systems that definitely weren't primitive. "Fun fact," the ambassador's voice continued cheerfully, "humans have this thing called movies. Science fiction, specifically. For centuries, we've been publishing our military technology plans disguised as entertainment. That whole 'that's no moon' thing totally called it. The station, which was roughly the size of, well, a moon, began to power up. Sensors on the Council ships went crazy trying to analyze the energy readings. "Sir," one of Vrax's officers reported, voice trembling, "we're detecting thousands of new ships emerging from inside the Earth's oceans." That's impossible. The pressure would crush any vessel." "Oh, right," the ambassador chimed in again. "We forgot to mention, those submarine things we use to fight each other? Turns out the same technology works pretty well in space. Who knew?" Massive vessels were indeed rising from Earth's oceans, water sliding off advanced stealth hulls that had been hiding in plain sight for decades. Each one was easily a match for a Council dreadnought, and there were hundreds of them. Thousands. "But your energy signatures," Cleforth burbled in their command bubble. "Our surveys showed only primitive fission and fusion power." "Yeah, about that. Remember how we kept talking about looking for clean energy solutions? Turns out hiding our actual power generation inside solar and wind farm installations was surprisingly easy. You guys never even scanned them. Something about them being too primitive to bother with." The human vessels moved with impossible precision, their formation like a choreographed dance. No radio communications, no visible coordination, just perfect synchronization. "Neural networks," the ambassador explained, clearly enjoying this. "Not the AI kind, actual human brains linked together through quantum entanglement. Turns out our primitive social media networks were good practice for group consciousness." The Council fleet attempted to regroup, but it was like trying to herd quantum particles with a butterfly net. Every time they established a formation, they'd find human ships already there, as if they'd predicted the move hours in advance. "That's because we did," came the response to their unspoken confusion. "Those climate modification satellites you seeded in our atmosphere? We reprogrammed them years ago. They've been gathering your tactical data, analyzing your fleet movements. Our quantum computers have been running combat simulations since before you even planned this attack." A new series of signals appeared on the Council's tactical displays, massive energy signatures emerging from what they'd thought were civilian space stations around Mars and Venus. "Oh, and those colonies we've been struggling to establish on other planets. Strictly speaking, they're not colonies. More like forward operating bases, fully automated. Just needed the right signal to wake up." The Council fleet was now surrounded on all sides. The massive moon station above, the ocean-borne dreadnoughts below, and the automated planetary defenses on their flanks. Every weapon was primed, every system revealing capabilities that should have been centuries beyond human development. But why?" Vrax managed to ask. "Why maintain this deception? Why let us think you were primitive?" For the first time, the ambassador's voice lost its amused tone. "Because, General, humans have this saying, 'The greatest victory is the battle not fought.' We wanted to give peace a chance. We watched you sabotage our climate, restrict our technology, plot our destruction, and still we hoped you'd choose diplomacy." The moon station's main weapon array began to glow with energy that defied classification. "We're not actually going to fire that," the ambassador noted. "It's just that, well, remember what I said about humans being giant nerds? We basically built it because someone said it would look cool, which it totally does." A final set of readings appeared on the Council's sensors. Millions of tiny signatures, similar to the microsatellites but different. They swarmed around the Council ships like electronic fireflies. "Those, however, we are going to use. Nanite disassemblers. Don't worry, they're programmed for capture, not destruction. We're not monsters after all. We just want to make sure you're listening when we explain the new rules." The Council fleet hung motionless in space, surrounded by overwhelming force that had been hidden in plain sight for decades. Their ships were infiltrated by technology they couldn't counter. Their tactical position was hopeless, and their every possible move had been predicted and countered before they even thought of it. "Now then," the ambassador concluded, "shall we discuss the terms of your surrender? And this time perhaps we could skip the part where you underestimate us?" General Vrax made possibly the worst decision of his soon-to-be shortened career. He gave the order to fight back. "If we die with honor," he bellowed, his scales now a desperate shade of crimson. "All ships, open fire." The human ambassador's sigh echoed across all frequencies. "Well, we did try to warn them. All units, combat protocol Hold My Beer is now in effect." What followed was quite possibly the most one-sided space battle in galactic history. Though battle might be generous, tech demo would be more accurate. The Council's plasma lances splashed harmlessly against shields that seemed to be made of pure mathematics, fractal patterns absorbing and redirecting energy in ways that made physics cry in the corner. Meanwhile, the human vessels began demonstrating exactly why letting Deathworlders develop in isolation had been a terrible idea. "Check this out," the ambassador's broadcast continued, now sounding like an excited tour guide. "These are our quantum torpedoes. They exist in multiple states simultaneously until they impact. Really fun at parties. Streaks of probability-defying weapons fire crossed space, somehow hitting targets before they were actually fired. Several Council ships found themselves exploding in the past, which was especially disconcerting for their present crews. And here we have what we call our gravity bombs. Pretty basic stuff, just tiny artificial black holes that evaporate after a few seconds. The math was a pain to work out, but it turns out all those PhD physicists needed something to do between grant applications. The Council fleet's formation broke apart, as localized gravitational anomalies treated space-time like a toddler with Play-Doh. Ships were stretched, compressed, and occasionally folded into shapes that would give Euclidid geometry nightmares. Oh, and this next bit is something we're particularly proud of. We call it the Cottrell Z field. It basically reverts matter to a previous state. Watch what it does to your fancy hull alloys. Several Council ships suddenly found themselves transformed into their component raw materials, clouds of unbonded elements drifting in space, while their crews floated safely in containment bubbles. The moon station, which still hadn't fired its main weapon, it really was just for show, began broadcasting what appeared to be combat statistics as if this were some sort of cosmic video game. Complete with achievement notifications. Multi-kill, gravitational domination, quantum supremacy, your physics are belong to us. Sorry about that, the ambassador commented. The AI running the targeting systems got a bit excited. It's been waiting decades to show off. A group of Council destroyers attempted to make a break for it, pushing their engines to maximum. They made it about 3 light seconds before running face first into what appeared to be a wall of solid darkness. Right, probably should have mentioned the space-time barricades. We basically took a chunk of null space and folded it into a pretzel. The math for that one came from a grad student's coffee-fueled breakdown during finals week. The human vessels moved through space with casual disregard for physics, their drives leaving trails of exotic particles that spelled out, "Having fun yet," in 27 different languages. And this, the ambassador continued as new signals appeared around Jupiter, is why we really like to study gas giants. Turns out they're perfect for hiding our really big guns. Jupiter's atmosphere lit up as thousands of massive weapons platforms emerged from what should have been crushing pressure and electromagnetic interference. Each one was roughly the size of Earth's Australia, and all of them were painted with what appeared to be racing stripes. The stripes make them go faster, the ambassador explained. That's a joke. They're actually fractal antenna arrays for our faster-than-light targeting systems. The paint job is just because, well, they do look cool. A few Council ships attempted to self-destruct rather than face capture. Their crews were somewhat surprised to find themselves teleported into holding cells before they could press the metaphorical button. Quantum entanglement transporters, came the explanation. Not usually practical for military use, but we figured you might try something dramatic. Also, those self-destruct systems. We replaced them with confetti dispensers about an hour ago. The nanites get bored easily. The remaining Council ships hung motionless in space, their crews watching in stunned silence as humanity casually redefined what was possible with technology. The tactical displays showed more human forces arriving every second, ships emerging from dimensional pockets, defense platforms unfolding from seemingly empty space, and swarms of drones that appeared to be using probability itself as a propulsion system. By the way, the ambassador added, remember all those science fiction movies we broadcast into space? The ones your cultural analysts dismissed as primitive entertainment? Yeah, those were our military documentaries. We just added dramatic plots and romantic subplots to make them more interesting. Michael Bay's explosion scenes were actually classified footage. The battle, if you could call it that, was over in less than an Earth-standard hour. Not a single human vessel had been destroyed. Not a single human life had been lost. The most damage they'd sustained was some slightly scratched paint from all the confetti. Now then, the ambassador's voice took on a more businesslike tone. Would anyone else like to try underestimating us? Or can we move on to the part where we explain how galactic civilization is going to work from now on? The only response was the sound of thousands of surrender signals being transmitted simultaneously. Excellent choice. Also, whoever programmed your surrender signals to play that sad trombone sound, that's just perfect. We're keeping that. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, panic had replaced pomposity. The massive displays showed their fleet's utter decimation in crystal-clear detail, complete with helpful infographics courtesy of humanity's apparently SAS-programmed AI systems. High Councillor Zixatal's membranes had gone completely transparent, the xenobiological equivalent of turning ghost white. This is impossible. Our intelligence reports. We're exactly what we wanted them to see, the human ambassador interrupted, strolling into the chamber as casually as someone entering a coffee shop. Amazing how effective it is to just tell the truth in a way no one will believe. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from 1,000 worlds all tried to speak at once, creating a cacophony of terrified bureaucracy. The ambassador waited patiently, checking what appeared to be a primitive wrist-mounted chronometer, but was probably capable of destroying a small moon. If we could proceed to negotiations, the ambassador finally suggested, unless you'd prefer another demonstration. What are your terms? Cleaforth burbled, their fluid environment now an anxious shade of green. Oh, nothing too extreme. First, obviously, you're going to stop trying to manipulate our planet's climate. We've actually been using your attempts to bootstrap our own terraforming technology. Thanks for that, by the way, but it's getting a bit annoying. A holographic list materialized in the center of the chamber, spinning slowly. Second, all that technology you've been holding back, we'd like access to it. Not because we need it, as you've noticed, we're doing fine, but it'll be easier to standardize trade regulations if we're all working with the same tech base. Representative NX 227's crystalline form vibrated with tension. And if we refuse, then we'll take it anyway and figure it out ourselves. Probably make improvements while we're at it. We just thought it would be polite to ask first. The list continued spinning, displaying more terms. Third, and this is really the important bit, you're going to stop trying to contain control, or otherwise mess with developing species. We've seen what you did to the Proxima Centauri civilization. Not cool, folks. Not cool at all. You dare dictate terms to the Galactic Council, someone shouted from the upper tiers. The ambassador's smile was pure predator. Actually, about that, there's going to be some restructuring. We're thinking more along the lines of a cooperative federation, with proper representation for all species, not just the ones you decided were civilized enough. The list concluded with a final item that simply read, "Play nice or don't play at all." But, Zixatal's membranes fluttered in distress. This changes everything. The power structure, the economic systems, the very foundation of galactic society. Yes, the ambassador agreed cheerfully. That's rather the point. You tried to keep us contained because you were afraid we'd disrupt your carefully controlled status quo. Congratulations, you created a self-fulfilling prophecy. The chamber had gone quiet now, the kind of quiet that happens when 1,000 different species all realize they've collectively stepped on a landmine. Oh, and one more thing, the ambassador added, almost as an afterthought. We want an official apology, in writing, properly notarized. We're going to frame it and put it in our new human embassy, which, by the way, is going to be that nice building you used to use for council meetings. This is outrageous. General Vrax, who had been transported directly from his flagship to the chamber, exploded. You can't. Actually, the ambassador cut in, I think you'll find we can. We just did. But hey, look on the bright side. You wanted to see what would happen when humans stopped playing nice. Mystery solved. Now who's ready to sign some treaties? The collection of most powerful beings in the galaxy stared at their new reality, presented in the form of a smiling human with a stack of documents and the most advanced military force anyone had ever seen backing them up. One by one, they began to sign. One standard galactic year later, the view from the newly established Terran Embassy, formerly the Grand Galactic Council Chamber, was quite different. Representatives from hundreds of species hurried through the halls, including several that the old council had deemed too primitive for membership. The human ambassador sat in their office reviewing reports on a holographic display that definitely wasn't primitive anymore. They didn't bother hiding the advanced technology these days. The cat was rather spectacularly out of the bag. Another successful integration of a developing species, they noted, reading the latest update. The Proxima Centauri civilization is particularly grateful for our help in rebuilding their world. Apparently, they've named their new planetary defense system the Human Special. Nice touch. A soft chime announced the arrival of former High Councillor Zixatal, now serving as a junior diplomatic liaison. His membranes had never quite regained their former luster after what historians now called the Enlightenment event, though humans just called it the day we stopped pretending. The quarterly progress report, as requested, Zixatal submitted, trying very hard to maintain his dignity. All member worlds are adapting to the new protocols. Even the hegemony has begun dismantling their expansion fleet. Voluntarily? The ambassador asked, raising an eyebrow. Well, after you turned their flagship into a spacefaring aquarium for endangered stellar fauna, they saw the wisdom of cooperation. The ambassador nodded, checking another item off their endless to-do list. And how are the cultural exchange programs going? Human entertainment continues to be disturbingly popular, although there is some debate about whether your historical documents, these action movies, are entirely accurate. Let them keep guessing, the ambassador chuckled. It's good for everyone to maintain a healthy sense of uncertainty. Outside the embassy windows, a fleet of ships passed by. Sleek vessels combining technologies from a dozen different species, all working together under the new Federation protocols. No more artificial barriers, no more technological hoarding, no more containing species that showed too much promise. You know, the ambassador mused, none of this would have happened if you'd just played nice in the first place. Zixatal's membranes rippled with what might have been embarrassment. We were concerned about maintaining stability. And instead you created the very instability you feared. There's probably a lesson in that. Something about self-fulfilling prophecies and the danger of underestimating people who evolved on a planet that actively tries to kill them. A notification popped up on the ambassador's display. Another species had achieved spaceflight and was requesting Federation membership. Their first message was a request for clarification about whether humans were really as terrifying as the stories suggested. Tell them the truth, the ambassador instructed Zixatal. Tell them that humans are exactly as dangerous as everyone says. We just prefer to use that capability to help rather than harm. Most of the time. Unless someone tries to mess with us or our friends. And the stories about the moon-sized battle station? Oh, definitely tell them about that. In fact, we're thinking of building another one. This time with racing stripes. As Zixatal hurried off to compose the reply, the ambassador looked out at the bustling galactic civilization that had emerged from the ashes of the old order. Turned out that when you stopped trying to control everything and everyone, amazing things could happen. The ambassador's primitive wrist device chimed with a reminder, time for the weekly game night with the other species representatives. Tonight's entertainment? A strategy game humans had invented called chess. They hadn't told anyone yet that it was actually a simplified version of their basic military tactical training. Some lessons about underestimating humans were best learned gradually after all. "Computer," the ambassador called out as they prepared to leave, "please update the official Federation motto." The AI complied, and across the galaxy, displays updated to show the new slogan, "Be nice or find out." And somewhere, in the vast depths of space, a moon-sized battle station twinkled with totally unnecessary but absolutely awesome running lights, a perpetual reminder that some Deathworlders just want to watch the galaxy learn, the hard way.